Hey, welcome to another episode of the Icarus Idea. Today we're talking to Nienke Kea, and when we found her on the internet, we thought, hold up, you can be a data management specialist at Douwe Egberts after studying industrial design engineering. Now, apart from finding out how that is possible, Nienke tells us how she let anger successfully determine her career path. And somehow we end up talking about artificial uteruses. So on top of that, there's a lot more in this episode, so hope you enjoy. Welcome to the 9th episode of the Icarus Idea. Hope we can tickle your mind again this episode. As always, let us know what you think either on icarus.podcast@gmail.com or you can, of course, DM us on Instagram. Now, speaking of Instagram, we have a really exciting guest for our next episode, and you will be able to ask him whatever you want. So we'll announce any information about that on Instagram real soon, so keep an eye out on our gram. Now, my name is, of course, Joris, and beside me are two people, one of which is, of course, Jean. And without further ado, Jean, would you care to introduce our guest for today?
Of course, thank you, Joris, for the nice introduction. I want to introduce our guest for today. It's again a female guest at the show. She has graduated in 2011 at the University of Twente, working on graduation assignment at Nienke, which is a marketing and advertisement bureau in Amsterdam. After her studies, she worked for multinationals such as IKEA and Douwe Egberts. And currently, she's working for Bo Weevil, which is a wholesaler that uses organic cotton in their products. Welcome, Nienke Kea. Thanks for joining on this Sunday evening.
Thanks for your introduction and thanks for having me.
Thanks for being our guest. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Yeah.
Good. Nice. Okay. Well, as always, we'll just start right off with a puntje to just get into it. Would you like to just get ahead and go first?
Well, I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's go then.
Let's go. It's a really I have been handworking, so sewing mostly. Already from an early age on, but also did that during my studies. And I think being an industrial designer, you have a lot of times that you see something, you think, I can make that.
Yeah.
Don't know if you recognize that, but you see it.
Yeah.
So I did something and I saw embroidery, hand embroidery on clothing. And I thought, I can make that. And I asked my girl, she's almost 6 years old. I said to her, draw something and I will embroider it for you. And she did. And I found myself sitting on the couch yesterday. And I thought, I can do it, but I don't like to do it.
I've heard my sister say that a couple of times when we're walking or climbing a mountain. She says, she was all the way arguing. I'm like, I can't go walking to the top of the mountain. And we said, yeah, you can do it. You can do it. And then when we reached the top of the mountain, she said, yeah, I can do it, but I would rather not.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. That's a lesson as well.
Yeah.
I think it's good to think beforehand, or maybe not beforehand, but check in with yourself whether you're liking what you're doing.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good moral of the story.
Yeah, first life lesson in the first 1.5 minutes of the episode. Let's go.
We can skip the last part now, right?
Yeah. All right, well, Sean, you mentioned before we started that you had something very interesting today, so...
Yeah, it's just kind of futuristic, and when I see you on Skype, Joris, when I have to describe the picture that I see, you're sitting underneath a table with blankets on top of it and having a really bad posture, and That's actually what it is about. Because what I found on Kickstarter is actually a project which has been funded by 150,000 euros already, is a chip. And what you do is you place this chip on your body, and the chip uses your body heat to power itself, and then it sends photons into your body, which will the same photons that are used by your brain to power your muscles and stuff like that. These are sent to your muscles that you have to use having a good posture. And then the chip will gradually enhance like your physical and your mental health by like sending these photons. And it's actually pretty cool. It's called Tau Patch. It hasn't been launched, but it will in the future. Good to say too is that when you're like physically or mentally enhancing your body, you kind of have the counter argument that you would say, yeah, but when you're used to it and when you don't have it, then your body will need it, like the same thing with drugs, for example. But the thing is that this chip, it sent these photons and your brains get used to it. So you will keep that good posture and maybe a bit like mental health you will also increase. But the cool thing is that you will keep it when you don't have the chip. So what do you think about that?
I think I could use that.
Yeah, me too.
Only you telling the story made me sit up.
Yeah.
I'm a bit hesitant though, because photons is just a fancy word for light, I think.
Yeah,
so
true.
It sounds to me like you put a sticker on your body, and in the sticker there's a lamp, and the lamp shines on your skin, and somehow you get a better posture.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it works, or maybe it is like I forgot the word.
Placebo?
Placebo effect. Yeah. Wow, that came far. It was right on my tongue, but yeah, like maybe it has a placebo effect when you place this chip on your body. Then automatically you will think that you are like sitting better and like feeling better and stuff like that. So maybe it's a placebo effect, but I don't know. Maybe it works.
If it works, it works.
Yeah.
It's a good thing, right? I think it's good that these initiatives start because we're sitting way too much.
Yeah.
So if you can at least sit right,
yeah,
that's better. Now we need to move, but okay.
Oh, we will see. Joris, you had something different?
Yeah, I had a doubt between two things, and one was a consequence of the other, but I'll just stick to the first one because, as most people know, we stalk our guests before having them on the show.
A little bit.
A little bit.
Not physically, like on the internet.
Yeah, we just call it research.
Yeah.
But I found out, Nienke, that I think it was your bachelor assignment at the University of Twente, that you worked on a incubator for kids, but for developing countries.
Yep. Yeah.
I found that very interesting. I wasn't aware that like that's the thing. That's like you need a different type of incubator for a developing country.
I wasn't aware either, but you do. Because of very different reasons. But for one, not only, well, they can pay most often, because that's what most people think. They are too poor to buy, from Western countries, so baby incubators we use. Mm-hmm. But mostly that's not a problem. They could buy one, but for example, the electricity is so bad that when they plug it in, it will burn, or not the complete thing will burn, but the electrical wires will, and sensors and stuff cannot resist the peaks in electricity. So it will shut down and it will not work anymore.
I read in, I think, the summary of your report, which, by the way, you can just find on the internet in the repository of the University of Twente, if anyone wants to check it out. small pitch.
So you can see you don't need me for drawings. Yeah.
But I read as well that like if it's like the instabilities in the electrical network are so large that it just, if it doesn't like burn through like you mentioned, then the power drops out and then it doesn't work either. Yep. So in both cases your baby isn't sustained, right?
Yep. Yeah, and also you have different electrical plugs in different countries, different everything. So replacement of parts is also really bad. You name it.
You did this at the Hemel Baby Incubator organization, I think, or foundation, is it?
It's a foundation, yeah. Dr. Van Hemel, Oscar Van Hemel. He started building it just from scratch, just by learning by doing, right? and he had Alzheimer's disease. So it wasn't really documented very well. My initial assignment was to document how it worked and why it worked. And that was quite difficult because he couldn't answer to very open questions.
Oh, you actually interviewed Dr. Hemel?
Yeah.
And while he was having Alzheimer's?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Oh.
Yeah. So I need to make really close questions like, the baby is 6 months. Can it be in an incubator, yes or no? Because if it would be an open question, there wouldn't be an answer. Or at times, I had someone with me who knew him really well, because at times he would go back a couple of years and he was telling about an incubator from 20 years ago or something. So that's sort of translator in between. Yeah.
That must be, I think, quite hard to let's say extract. That sounds very clinical, but to extract information from someone in that situation.
Yeah, it was. You do what you can do, but also talk to people around him, so that helps, of course. And talked. I was planning to go to Kenya, but I think there was a civil war at the time, so I couldn't go. So I did a lot of questionnaires with people who were there or in other developing countries.
After graduating, you did already very different things. You did something for, let's say, charity almost, and then the INDG marketing company came in. Were you at that time searching for what you liked, or was it how did that go?
I think I did the charity thing more or less because at that moment I thought I should do something useful for the world. And now it's a good time because I don't have any obligations to anyone. I don't have to earn a salary. I can just do this. And also because I like it, because I like designing for small people, for babies and kids. And I remember a project, I think it's in first or second year, the last of the first year it was, where we needed to develop, or asked to develop an interactive toy. Yeah, I like that. I like to have people who cannot explain by words what they need, but they can show you lots of things by how they play, or what they do say when playing. So I really like that.
Yeah. I'm just curious. How do you deal with the feedback that you receive from small kids or childs and?
Yeah, that
babies.
Was only that study project, because a baby in an incubator, well,
yeah,
not really interested in what you design.
Well, I don't really agree with that though, because I actually did a project once for service engineering. That was a course, and there the project was about a artificial uterus. Which, now that I say it out loud, sounds very weird, which it was. But the point that I wanted to make is that these babies in the artificial uterus, they needed to be in some kind of very comfortable environment. And the way they measured whether the baby was happy with the environment was either the scientific way, so by heart rate and movement and crying and stuff like that, quantifiable things. But also, which I found very intriguing, if they do research about whether a baby in an incubator or an artificial uterus is happy, they ask the parents, is your baby happy now? Because apparently parents, I'm not a parent, so I don't know, but I can imagine that parents are able to judge whether their baby is happy or not.
Yeah, so I can go into that, yeah.
So last time we had Marianne Loaf. Did you hear the podcast from last time?
Bits and pieces, yeah.
Yeah, it's about female urinals, and she worked for rather small companies. Since you've been working for IKEA and Douwe Egberts, we were kind of wondering, how was your experience at these big companies? Is it kind of different than small companies, or is it like kind of the same working for large companies, such as Douwe Egberts, for example?
It's definitely different and the same as well. And also there are big differences between big companies like IKEA and Douwe Egberts is also really big difference. At IKEA, for example, there's really much structure. There are manuals on how to do stuff. Like for every department, there's a different manual. There's a manual in how a store should operate, for example. At Douwe Egberts, this was much less, these manuals, although they started with in the end when I nearly left. So they were catching up on that. But at IKEA, I worked in a store.
Yeah.
So that's actually a company within a company. So there are not too many people working at the store. It's a big group, but it's not like big. So that felt smaller in a way. Douwe Egberts is much larger, and that was mainly, how do you say, I think a part of it was, for example, that you had different departments that used to be different departments, but that were put together, and then they had to find a new balance in how to cooperate, for example. But also there, I was in a team, the data management team was a fairly small team. So my team felt like a small company.
Yeah.
But when you get to decision making, and that's often much harder in bigger companies because you have to go to different layers of approval. So I think that's a characteristic. But in my experience, most big companies are a lot of little companies clustered together.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I was kind of like expecting that from a big company. So what I was curious about is that you worked for a year for IKEA, and then you switched to Douwe Egberts, working on data management. Why did you choose to work on data management at Douwe Egberts, and how did you end up there?
Yeah, I more or less stumbled upon it. How I started, I've graduated with more customer journey design, I will call it.
Yeah.
Then I started at IKEA, which was also more about the customer journey. So I was a manager of teams who were pre-sales and after sales.
What does that mean?
Pre-sales is the people that welcome you to the store and also arrange the shopping tools. So they fill these yellow bags in the store, and the shopping carts are transported, and also the Smalland employees.
Oh,
so who
the more important employees of IKEA. Not gonna lie, these are vital people.
Yeah, true that.
I'm not joking.
Yeah, that and after sales, of course, is the customer service.
Check.
Yeah.
And then I started at Douwe Egberts, or later Jacobs Douwe Egberts. I actually started with customer research. So there was a project started about the Net Promoter Score, which is, well, maybe you know when you get a questionnaire after you bought something and they ask the question, would you recommend this and this to another? And then you have to rate it on a scale of 0 to 10, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that type of research, that's called the Net Promoter Score. And they were implementing that at JDE, and that's where I stepped in. But this was really hands-on. It was a temporary function. So I assisted the manager with making it known within the company, because all teams had to work with it. But I also arranged installing LCD screens for showing the current scores, for example. And also, and then we get to the data, to know where you can send the questionnaires to, you need email addresses. And we just needed to collect these. And Douwe Egberts has a lot of ways of servicing people. I was maybe it's good to tell that I was in the professional business of JDE, which is the coffee machines that are in companies and with you at university, etc. So not the coffee that is sold in the supermarket. That's another division. And getting coffee into companies can also be done in very different ways. We had companies that would order to the website. We had coffee machines that are serviced by our own personnel, employees. So they are visited every so often. And you have route sales, which are sales operators on the road, and they will visit the company every so often and bring their products, of our products, but bring coffee. Yeah, and all these channels, we needed to find email addresses so we could survey these people, and that's how I set up. And that was at first really simple list of Excel. And then it became more complicated along the way, so it became a database. And then so that's when it got too big, and when my other activities concerning the project were more or less over. I went to the data team with this data, and well, we professionalized it over there.
Okay.
So that's a good, also maybe a good thing in a big company.
Yeah.
That there's a lot of people you can learn from.
Yeah.
You mentioned beforehand that you had to learn the whole data management thing from scratch when you started at Jacobs Douwe Egberts, right?
Yep. Yeah.
How did that go? Did you just walk up to someone and say, "Hey, can you teach me about data management?" And then a week later you were a specialist, or?
Well, some more or less. No, it was a team, and it was really, in the beginning we weren't really professional in such a sense, and a lot of young graduates actually, and some people who were already more into programming and stuff. So that's how I learned to use the database, just sitting next to a colleague and asking him, how could I do this? And I want to do that. And a lot of Googling as well. Yeah. And then building, just doing it. And that worked really well when you don't have these complicated things. And then you can get it as complicated as you'd like. But in a way, data sounds really scary. It's not the topic that you open on birthday parties. When you say
I'm a data specialist.
Yeah, then people say, okay, can I get you some or when you say I'm a data specialist at JDE, oh, you've got good coffee there, right? So at least you've got good coffee in the office. Yeah, so yeah, and that's also what I try to do at JDE, is making data a bit less scary.
Yeah, I think we talked about that beforehand as well. That one of the things that an industrial design engineer is good at, in your experience, is talking about difficult topics in Dutch. We call it Jip and Janneke language, right? In, let's say, what do you call that in English?
Like small talk, or not like small talk. It's more
layman terms.
Yeah, layman terms.
So you mentioned that, and I found that quite interesting. And as Jean mentioned in that same conversation, is that we talked to Jorn about two episodes ago?
Yeah.
And he said that the capabilities of communication of an industrial design engineer are actually quite special and quite valuable. Do you agree with that, or what do you think?
Yeah, I would say so. I think we are good at listening to people and not only seeing a product, but also seeing what they need, right? So there can be different results.
Yeah. Maybe it's more like translating the needs of the user or the experience to a concrete like problem, and like cluster it out, and then you have like the clear vision on what actually the problem is and how you can solve it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's called the starting steps in your design process, right? Doing an inventory of what your customer, I would say, needs, or your clients, or your
whatever you want to call it. Yeah. I think that's where the value might come in as well, though, because when you mentioned that, we're very good at communicating in layman terms, and I thought, is that really what brings value as an industrial designer? Like, I'm in an application conversation, and they're like, so what are your strengths? And like, I'm really good at talking with people, and it just felt a bit like, is that really my value? But when you connect it to what a client might need, then it becomes valuable, because that's what drives an entire company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if you want to get something off the ground, you need to be able to, and especially when it's about data, you need to be able to explain why you want to make it. And you cannot say anything about, I have this in this field in our system and I want to connect it because that's way too technical. So you need to make a story out of it. I think I did that the most successfully when I presented for a group of salespeople, because we had a lot of work that they needed to do. So they needed to record a lot of their actions in the system and client data, because they were the people who actually visit the client. And salespeople often want to sell stuff and go on.
Is that what they do?
Is that what salespeople do?
Most often, in my experience, of course, there are many different salespeople, but they just want to sell and they don't want to have any administration. So on the one hand, I had a colleague who made easy forms so they could work a bit outside of the system and have some sort of quick entry that we loaded into the system afterwards. But on the other hand, we had to tell them why they needed to do that. And in the end, I came up with just a short presentation. I had 3 sheets, I guess. And afterwards, I was Nienke of the weather forecast because I compared it to the weather forecast. Because I told them, you need to collect all this data. We have, for weather forecast, we have data from, I think, 100 years now or something. And based on that, we can make a forecast on what weather we expect it to be.
Yeah.
But even then, so we can do a forecast for you on what clients will most likely be effective to visit, for example. But also, when you watch the weather forecast and it's sunny and you look outside and it's raining, bring an umbrella, right? So that's just translating. I really like to use metaphors, so I used that there, and it really worked well. Yeah.
Nice.
So I think that's also being an industrial designer, is that most of the time we have a really associative mind, so we can make a lot of connections between things.
About using metaphors, I used metaphors also during my studies, and I had a presentation on my minor, and we had to present like this presentation about APIs, and that's also something that has to do with data management, because APIs are like small packages that are sent in between programs, in between, for example, Facebook and Google. When you want to log into Facebook while using Google, APIs are sent in between Google and Facebook, like small packages. And we compared that also with, if we used a metaphor to describe this, we used a metaphor as a waiter in a restaurant that receives your order and then goes to the kitchen, then translates that order, and then goes back to the customer and gives them their food. It is really helpful, like using these metaphors to describe things and making clear what is actually the problem, or what you want to solve, or what is your solution. So yeah, I like it too. I'm using it too during my studies.
Yeah, also because you have to adjust to your audience, right? You wouldn't use such a metaphor when you're talking to
exactly.
IT specialists, but you would use it when you talk to, for example,
the
a
sales
company.
Unit.
Yeah,
yeah, for example. Yeah, the sales
poor salespeople.
Nienke, just I'd like to get into something else real quick.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you stumbled a bit upon the job at Douwe Egberts. And I think you told us before the recording that it was actually a friend of yours who worked there. And then you were like, "Whoa, that sounds like a cool job." And then she left and she proposed you, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly that.
Not like that stumbling upon, let's say, career opportunities. I think we heard that before in different people that we spoke with. And even the Marianne Lot from the last episode, she basically almost stumbled upon the topic of toilets. But then she stuck with that one topic. And when I found the incubator topic, I thought another different topic? Like, you've done so many different things. Like, do you think that, do you have a preference? Like, in hindsight, do you think that you would have still done 8 different types of jobs? Or do you think maybe becoming an expert might have been better?
No, I'm not an expert. I get bored from being an expert. I think when I heard Marianne say you should choose, I think she advised, right, to become a specialist.
Yeah.
Find something you really like and stick with. I think that would be wonderful. I really admired my best friend. When I got to know her in when we were 13 or something, she told me she wanted to be a veterinarian, and now she's a veterinarian and she's really happy in doing that job. And I always kind of admired that, or I was sort of envious about it. Like, wow, I would love to know what I wanted to do, but here I am, and I still don't know. And actually, I think I would even like it better to have multiple jobs at the same time. So I don't think there's one solution. If you find something that you would love to work on for the rest of your life, please do so. But it might not be the case, and you don't know beforehand, because you need to stumble upon something, and maybe that's not women urinals at the first stumble, right?
Yeah.
But that isn't actually like totally crazy, like having multiple jobs. Yeah, when I'm thinking about it, maybe you've heard also, for example, Rutger Bregman talking about working for 3 days a week or 4 days a week instead of 5, like the regular format. I think we as a society should think about like having different jobs and having like a lot of things that you find interesting, and then working on them like ongoing. And like, because I think in my point of view, also what you already said, Nienke, is that you're getting like, you don't want to be an expert or like go dive into the topic, but having this, of course, having this knowledge about the topics, but then like hoovering over them and then doing different things at the same time. I think it would definitely help me too, and I would be more happy working on these different jobs instead of like focusing on this special job, because you get bored, something like that.
How many, Nienke, how many jobs would you take at the same time?
I think 2, but it also really depends on the work you're in, right? I'm now at Bo Weevil. I work 3 days only, but I do a little bit of everything. I do data management because we have a web shop, and data and stock keeping and stuff like that. And it's a really, really small company, so it's 4 people in total. So it's really different from a JDE. And a few weeks ago, I was sewing face masks, just trying to see how that would work and if you would like to have them made. Decision making is really quick there, but I'm also doing data, so I'm doing a bit of industrial design, I'm doing a bit of data, and so I'm doing multiple jobs in one company now.
Yeah.
And apart from that, I'm studying. So I have enough to do right now. And but the study is also based on my vision that I think we should be able to do lifelong learning. And I don't think careers will be one straight line, linear, going up anymore.
It's like a design process.
Yeah.
It's not linear. Wow.
No, well, mine isn't. Well, if you could have a linear process, of course, if you'd like to have one, but I found out that I don't like that. So maybe it's good to know, and that's also why I said yes when you asked me, because at first I thought, well, I have the most weird resume you could think of, but well, hey, I'm going to tell about it because it's also an option. You don't need to start at point A and go up.
It's actually the reason that we thought, whoa, okay, what happened here, you know?
Yeah,
I was wondering about, because I already entirely forgot about the fact that you were doing another studies like right now.
Mm-hmm.
Which studies is this again?
I'm doing a study to. I needed to look up the word for hoogbegaafd in English today because I know they say gifted, but I thought gifted, it sounds so weird, but it's gifted. But highly intelligent children, to be able to coach them. And of course, giftedness, hoogbegaafdheid, highly intelligence, it's all terminology, which is a bit, well, you can discuss about the terminology in itself, but that's what it is.
And why? Why did you choose to do that right now?
Because I needed to find something that I would get angry about. I was working in coffee, and I drink coffee. I like coffee. But I don't live coffee. I don't get angry if there's no coffee. Well, for a week or so. After I'm used to not drinking coffee, it's okay. So I needed to find something that would more ring to me, and I found that my niece, she had a bit of a struggle, actually both of them, in very different ways in their school careers, and I could be really angry about it. So why is it like that, and how could it be that? So I thought I need to do something with that, and I study at Novilo, and not particularly because I like to work with these gifted kids, but also because they focus on learning to learn. So what can be strategies for learning? And I think that can be much broader than only gifted kids. I think the audience would be bigger than it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's and what you already mentioned just a few minutes ago, we should use or start with lifelong learning. Of course, you already have it, but there's a lot of things that have to change about education in general, and I think changes can be made in the future. And I was just thinking today about education that has been used or is used nowadays, that you can do a lot of things online, and I
like
think,
embroidery, yeah.
It's amazing about if you have like these sites called Skillshare and stuff like that provide these things, and everyone can join, and it's kind of crazy why that isn't like that you can put that on your resume or something like that if you have learned these skills, but like can show it that you work for this amazing company or for this company. You can, I don't know. I'm just like throwing out ideas and just thinking about it. But working, like studying right now, how is it working and studying at the same time? Because we haven't had a guest that was doing it.
True.
Well, I planned a day off for that. So it's I used to work 4 days and now I do 3. So I plan to have an extra day for that, and it's a part-time study, so that will be working quite well. Although you shouldn't just have delivered a baby when you start studying.
Okay. Yeah. Please take notes.
It's hard to start. Yeah. So I will probably take some more time to finish it, but that's okay.
First of all, I just wanted to, like I've said, that the fact that you're looking for a job that makes you angry, like with that level of passion, I think that's an insanely good way to find a job that you like. I think, like, apart from the discussions we had with previous guests, such as Francis and Hio and Robin, that said you have to follow your heart. Like this is like the amplified version of that. I think that's very respectable. Just wanted to put that out there. But do you have like a goal? Already did like 10 different things, and do you have a vision of a 65-year-old Nienke will have done?
No, not really. Actually, what I'm trying to do, well, there was a time at the JDE where I wasn't really happy about what I was doing. And I was in a training session, and the trainer, she asked me, would you want to learn your kids? I only had one then. That she needed to work to support her family, or that she could work and do something she liked, although it might have a consequence that she has to move to a smaller house or something like that. And that really stuck with me. And that's where it originated, that I thought, okay, I must seek for something that really motivates me. So when I'm 50 or 65, I would love to see my girls working and enjoy it. And if they don't, then check in with themselves and change and be able to change.
I think that is a very good time to end this. Do you have an insane final question, Sean?
No, I think it's a really good conclusion of this conversation. Okay. And being able to like recognize when you, for example, have to change your mind about the things you do.
Yeah, of course, because things change.
Yeah, of course.
I once read that your friends change every 7 years. So why don't your interests change every 7 years, or maybe even more or less?
I do think that it takes a lot of courage, though.
Yeah.
Because especially switching to something that's less insecure, that when you have like kids and stuff, that sounds very scary to me.
Yeah, that's what most people say.
Yeah. So how do you well, no, I wanted to ask, like, how do you get over that?
I think I just felt it was the right decision.
Okay. Well, then on that bombshell, so to say, shall we just finish the episode?
Yeah.
Yep.
To you listening, thank you very much for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. If you're on Spotify or anywhere else, let us know what you think. Give us any ideas for the final episode. And keep a little eye on our Instagram, because we have an idea for the final episode to do some kind of Q&A where you can give us the questions for our final guests. So keep an eye on that and see how that works out. And other than that, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you. Oh, wait, Nienke, again, thank you very much for your time. I had a lot of fun. I think Sean had the same, and I think we all learned a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
He is actually underneath the table.
He is actually underneath the table. I'm not kidding.
With his childhood duvet cover. Or...
Yeah. Maybe he has it all the time. It's a secret place. Your secret place.